Hi, and welcome to the WhiskyTube Roundtable episode 9, hosted by me, Toby from Whisky Shared. The Roundtable is a monthly live stream with a different host and guests from the WhiskyTube community. This month I volunteered so I get to pick the topic, and this time it's the rising cost of whiskey. Something that most of us will have experience with, and my guests tonight are Mac from Campai Planet, Greg from Greg's Whisky Guide, and Vin from No Nonsense Whisky. Before I bring them in, for those that don't know me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Toby. I do whiskey reviews and blind tastings weekly on YouTube, and this is my first time hosting a live stream, so take it easy on me. What I'll do now is I'll bring in my first guest, and it's Mac from Campai Planet. Hi, Mac. How are you?
Hi, JB. Very good. All the better for being here. Thanks for having me on your first ever live stream as host.
Well, obviously, I know you very well, and some of my viewers might also know you. But for those that don't, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name's Mac. I'm originally from the UK, but I've been living in Japan for 18 years, and about 3.5 years ago I started a Japan drinks content platform driven by a YouTube channel called Campai Planet. Campai means cheers in Japanese, and a huge component of that is Japanese whiskey. I also talk about Japanese sake, shochu, which is Japan's indigenous spirit, and other drinks as well. But obviously whiskey is one of my true loves, and I'm glad to be here because I'm sure your audience knows that Japanese whiskey, it's not about the rising cost. It's been pretty premium beforehand, and I'm sure we'll be touching on that over the next 90 minutes or so.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I'll bring in Greg now from Greg's Whisky Guide. Hi, Greg. Thanks for coming on
hi, Toby.
Live stream.
Hi, Mac.
Again, as I
thanks
said
for having
about
me.
Mac. Yeah, you're welcome. Obviously, I know you very well, as do some of my viewers. But for those that don't, tell people what your channel's about and what you do.
Yeah, very quickly. My channel is different from my website, which is currently mothballed. Sorry about that, for refurbishment, total refurbishment. I started the channel by public demand from the website in 2019. The website dated from 2013. Originally, I was not supposed to do anything online, but publish a book, but 600 pages and 1,000 tasting notes. Nobody wanted it from someone not known. So I had to change it and jump on the modernity, so to speak. And then, so initially, the proportion between French and English language videos were not equal, but let's say well reported. But lately, unfortunately or not, I have way more non-French audience who participates, answers, comments, etc., than French audience. So I had to give the priority to the English-speaking audience. But however, when I do live shows, I'm always keen to go back to French if needed. I'm trying to go in depth on what I do about a bottle or a distillery or a kind of whiskey. It's a lot of work. I don't do editing, so I'm disadvantaged in a way, but some famous channels started like that as well. And then I'm trying also to keep in mind doing whiskeys that are expensive, but also that are not expensive, good values. So I'm sometimes switching between, as you're going to see today, high-end stuff that I have the chance to put my hands on earlier on. And this is the topic that just Mac told about, for instance, about Japanese whiskeys, which I love as well. And also to keep in mind that most of my audience doesn't have all the money that's asked nowadays for a lot of bottlings. So it's a difficult balance between things that have some substance and need work and need time, and has a cost, and things that can be 5-10 years old, blend, not blend, and they are more affordable. So I'm trying to stay democratic, but demanding at the same time, and it's difficult.
Okay, well, thanks for that. That's really, really great insight to everything you do on your YouTube channel. What I'll do is I'll bring in our final guest, which is Vin from No Nonsense Whisky. So let's bring him in now. Hi, Vin. Tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, yeah, the old arm going up. Hi, everyone. It's Vin here from No Nonsense Whisky. I've been knocking around for a little bit now. I think hopefully most people know who I am, but just in case, Vin, No Nonsense Whisky, started doing YouTube in 2016 because everyone in my social life was absolutely sick of hearing me talk about whiskey. So I had to do something because I was getting all nerdy about it. And it really just, it was, as it is still today, it's still my creative outlet. I hope people want to watch, but if people don't, that's also fine. Basically my channel tends to be a series of videos where people pick and choose what they want to watch rather than watching every single thing that comes out. And that's cool because I just want to talk about whiskey. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think, as I probably said before, yours was one of the channels that inspired me to do this as well. So, yeah, you've got a lot to answer for.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, more and more each day. Actually, whenever I do live stream or get new people on, I'm always. It's always a funny one as well because people say I'm their inspiration, but they never say if that's positive or negative. Like I can do it better than this guy.
Yeah, and I love your no nonsense. You don't beat about the bush. You tell it as it is. So that's quite refreshing.
Yeah, I do my best.
Okay, so before we dive into tonight's topic, let's have a quick look at the comments and see who's in tonight. We've got quite a few people already. I can see Donna Pass Whiskey. Hi to you. Apparently you're drinking a Balblair 03, so definitely interesting. I know Greg's got a Balblair that he wants to discuss tonight. We've got, who else have we got? We've got Alan Smith. Evening, Alan. It's good to see you in. Yeah, I've probably been chatting with you all week so far already on Discord, but yeah, it's great to have you in. Who else have we got? We've got Scott Matheson, so it's great to see you as well. And yeah, it looks like we've got some circumstance in the glass from Boss Wardrop. So yeah. There's definitely some great people inside. Oh, and we've got the infamous Menno multi-mission. So yeah, I'm sure he'll have some interesting things to say about the rising cost of whiskey. So there's too many people to pick on, but we've got Jeff Whiskey. Hi, Jeff. We've got Whiskey Lovers Society. Evening to you. And yeah, there's more and more names that keep popping up in the chat. So if I missed you, apologies. But yeah, really grateful that you dropped in, and hopefully you can share some of your thoughts as we discuss the rising cost of whiskey. Right. So where should we start? I think one good place to start is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Obviously, with prices rising in the whiskey sphere, we're obviously getting whiskies that are going up in price for many reasons. But do rising prices make you buy other brands or different expressions from the same distillery? What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this, guys?
Who's first? Shall I go first?
Yeah, don't mind.
Go ahead, and I'll jump in after you.
I mean, for me, I remember when I first started the channel, the guys that were around at the time, mostly American people, to be fair, and some of the bloggers were starting already to moan about rising prices. And in my head, I was like, these old guys, they don't know. It is what it is, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm slowly moving into that bracket now because the prices that I've seen rising are making my eyes water. And there are like, I'm going to start picking on brands nice and early, but Highland Park is my favorite example. They used to be literally my favorite distillery, and I
Wasn't
am
the 18-year-old one of your favourites as well?
100%, yeah. And I got the 18-year-old.
Affordable at the time.
Yeah, I got it for 85 quid.
Yeah.
That's that old livery as well, and they have completely priced me out of their range. Completely priced me out of it because I cannot afford to keep buying it for the price that it's going for, and especially when they're going to change things. Like, I really don't like that new tribal bottle, and I hate to be that kind of person, but you know, your money has to go very specifically to places that you want it to go to.
And obviously, your channel is focused on good value whiskey. So how can you present stuff that you like but is no longer good value?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really hard thing to get out of the mindset, because you can't sit there and go, oh well, this is rubbish now because 10 years ago it was 50 quid or half price of what it is now. That is almost irrelevant, and I find that really hard as a reviewer, because you have to go, right, today's prices, forget that I used to be able to get this for much cheaper. This is how much it is now. Is it worth that sort of money compared to the rest of the market? And sometimes yes, sometimes no is the truth. But and that's where I think we come in, really.
I think that's an interesting viewpoint. You can be quite led by previous, price history for any particular brand or bottle, but you have to look at the whole market rather than that in isolation, because just because that was your favorite or something you like doesn't mean that now it's double the price. It's expensive when everything else is, gone up because of inflation, or they held on the price of that bottle for 5 or 6 years without an increase, and that way it looks like when they put something up in price, it's gone up massively. So it's a difficult one, and sometimes it's justified, and a lot of the times to us it feels like it isn't.
100%.
Do you have any experience with that, Mac, with any of the brands that you love? Anything that sticks out that
I thought the
love
way
to buy but you don't?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've sort of been here. It's the wrong kind of ahead of the curve. I've already seen it in the comments. People talk about bloody expensive Japanese whiskey. So, like Japan is quite famous for. There you go, Gertz, with a very good point there. Japan has led the way in kind of declining population. It's happening in the rest of the world now, and Japan is often kind of going through this dystopian phase, and so it's really interesting seeing the dialogue around Scotch right now and rising prices, because it's something that we've been dealing with over the last decade in Japan. But what I wanted to go back to, Toby, was the way that you worded your original question. It got me thinking about something, which is, there are different types of price rises. And what you asked was, does that price rise affect your loyalty to the brand?
Yeah, and definitely.
It depends. It depends, of course, on a number of factors, like the magnitude of the price rise and the amount of cynicism that appears to be bedded into the price rise. So, inflation is a thing, and we're not stupid. Part of the cost of rising whiskey, sadly a small part of it, but is rising labor costs. So the people at the distillery deserve to be paid more, and that means that whiskey is going to be going up. So those kind of things are of less importance to me than if I see a brand just come in and go, what was X today is now, and believe me, we've seen it with Suntory and some of the price rises of their upper end whiskies, 2X now. Those sorts of moves are going to make me move away from a brand, because it's telling me that is not a brand acting with integrity. It's not a brand that's acting with authenticity, and it's not a brand that really cares about its fan base.
Yeah, I think, Vin, you've also had experience with that with Talisker 18. That's another one that has done similar, having been £75 in 2021. It's now £185, and that's not reflective of what it costs them to make it. It's all about premiumizing an age statement or a particular bottling. That can't be just the fact that they didn't increase the price for so many years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to factor that in with what we do as YouTubers, my video of the Talisker 18, and I haven't re-reviewed it recently because I can't afford the damn thing, But my video of it is based on the fact that I got it for 85 quid. And at the time, I remembered very distinctly saying, this is the best value 18-year-old there is on the market. And that video exists. It's permanent. It's there. And I could delete it, but it's there. So I get comments even today going, what are you talking about? And every single time I have to point them to the fact that this is a 5-year-old video. It's, whiskey is whiskey. Welcome to whiskey, basically, to that person. But yeah, I really should. I think I ended up putting a comment and pinning it saying, anyone watching this from 2023 onwards, this is not a valid video.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting point when you put out a video that's on YouTube that's sitting there for years on end, and obviously the whiskey landscape has changed a little bit, and the prices have shifted with that. Interestingly, I was looking at Talisker 18 earlier today, and its retail is actually £200 now. If you go onto malts.com, it's £200. I worked out that in 2014, so 10 years ago, its retail was £70. If you factor in inflation, today's bottle should only be £94. So, that isn't the fact that the cost.
Do you know the price here in 2007? Sorry.
Yeah, go on. Share away, Greg.
No. Just sorry to interrupt you. Because I have some data here. In 2007, I bought my bottle for €55. That's it.
Yeah.
And then I got a second one because the value was incredible. As you say, there is a date under our videos, right? People can see when it was recorded. So they should always keep that in mind while watching videos. But I think some of the people in the chat have found a solution to our struggle. It's to go through indie bottlers. It's one of the things we're going to
exactly.
Discuss,
we'll come to that shortly.
I don't know if you finished your point, and then I will.
No, it was just obviously
because I'm not necessarily coming from the same.
When liquid has inflationary pressures put upon it, because obviously the cost of manufacturing something, goes up on a monthly basis. Everybody sees that impact, but if you look at that in real monetary terms, inflation is a percentage and therefore has an economic value. So the whiskey is increasing much faster than it should do according to inflation. So the manufacturers, I think, even if they delay a price increase, it should still be over time. It should still be, roundabouts the cost of inflation, which is what it goes up by. So I think it's really difficult for us as consumers to be loyal to brands that just seem to take the mickey out of us and put the prices up to premiumize something because they want to put an item on a pedestal, and hopefully it has that effect where we don't buy it and therefore they find out the hard way. But these companies just offset the price with something else.
I think just to continue on that point about brand loyalty there as well, the slightly off topic with price, but one of the things I think that YouTube has ushered in, something that I do as well, is we're kind of dissolving brand loyalty, and it is hurting some brands, to be fair, because they are struggling to keep, because people are now, we're all explorers. We're explorers now. So all of us on screen today, we're not buying the same bottles over and over again because we need content. So we may as well buy something new if we're going to buy something. And I think the people in the comments and people that are watching, if they weren't like that to start with, they're becoming like that because we're introducing them to new things every week. So brand loyalty kind of is starting to slightly disappear because people aren't buying Glenfiddich 12 over and over and over again. They're going, I saw Toby talk about this last week, I'll pick that up. I saw Mac talk about this, I won't get that because he says it's too much. I think we're, not to say we're pioneers, but I think we're ushering in a new age of like anti-loyalty almost, but appreciation of brands rather than I will only buy single malt 15-year-old Glenlivet and that's it for the rest of life, because they're not watching us, to be fair.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there, and the fact that we've got so much whiskey choice these days means that we don't have to be limited by a particular brand or brands, because there's so much on the market, whether or not it's good or bad. And obviously we are the voice of whether or not we like stuff or don't like stuff. And you must get it, and I do too. People obviously comment on our videos to say, you know, my tastes are very similar to yours because, you know, I've seen lots of your videos and I align with your tastes. And I'm glad you said this isn't worth buying, so I'll leave that alone. Or I really like the fact that, you know, you said these notes are in it, so I went out and bought a bottle and really enjoyed it. So there are benefits to, you know, us being a sort of a sounding board for what's good and what's bad. But obviously, what I think's bad, somebody else might think's good. So it is good that there's a variety of channels out there that people can align their taste buds with. So should we move on to the topic of independent versus distillery bottlings?
Yeah,
can I say something first,
Yeah, sure.
Toby? Because
Sure,
when I was invited for this, honestly, I was very busy preparing something else, but I said, this is interesting. I mean, I like Toby, I like the channels that are in, and I wanted to bring my historical perspective, which I understand now some are not ready to hear or don't want to hear because they're going to be shocked, etc. I did prepare a lot of examples of that. Okay, let's forget it. There's some on the table, some on my list, but I wanted to take two examples that are very opposite, and one that's very disgusting, and to bring them some positivity, one that's very encouraging. And the both happened this year or the beginning of the year, and it's very striking for me because the one was very negative. It was the move from Edrington, of course, the owner, the Glenrothes. When I was at the show, little show at the Whisky Shop Paris, I knew that before coming. I heard the news, but I discussed with the ambassadors. I said, what are you doing here? For those who don't know, the Glenrothes has previously to 1 year or two, 1 year maybe, they had a full range of no age statement. Okay, entry level, 40%, you like, you don't like. Then you had a bit better, let's say, cask strength, no age statement, but still there was some more oomph for people who want a bigger experience. And then there were the high-end age statement, older age statement, etc. So quite the choice for everyone, democratic, right? Like it or not, like the style of distillery or not, there was something for everyone. But they did a move which was very shocking and I think probably unique of what I know. They decided to withdraw every reference of the core range under 18 years old.
Wow.
And for me, it was a shock. And let me give you the price of the 18 years old bottle at 43%, chill filtered. It's 190 euros in France. And the 25 years old is now anything from 600 and 750. So why did you do that? I said, oh, you know, we want to do something better for the audience, blah, 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 for the customers. I said, no way. I said, you targeting luxury markets, I mean, duty-free in Asia, etc. You're targeting people who have the money, fair enough. But you're not letting any choice for people who don't have, but still want something decent. And we have to really give you a red card for that, and that's what I did. So I tried to dig deeper, asking other people from the companies. I said, okay, we're going to release other things, but it's going to be minimum 20 years old and some single cask. And guess what? So the new one coming in, 34 years old, at 3,000 euros, something like that. And then, to keep things more positive, something happened this year which really shocked me, but on the good sense. I never tried Ardnahoe whiskey yet, inaugural release, because I found this was the most expensive with the Strathern, 95 euros here, 100 for Strathern. Considering there are other new distilleries that do great job, Ardnamurchan, for instance. I said no, I'm not going to jump on that. Also, having seen some reviews that were mixed. And then what do? They just announced on several media they're going to release a core range expression for £55. So it is way under the inaugural release, right? And I said, wow, why are you doing that? This is fantastic. This is great news. This is giving us hope. This is aligned on other distilleries, like a bit more than Ardnamurchan, but they say a bit more than Kingsbarns. I noted also other distilleries. It's still under the price of Nicnin that I found a bit expensive here, 75 euros for a release minimum. But I mean, this is encouraging. I couldn't believe that. So I hope now that the French price, which is not certain, will be as fair as this UK price. Because if they do that, it reminds me a bit like when Ben Rochemach did release his 5 years old, which was a very courageous move, and it was a decent dram. So yeah, I hope there will be other distilleries jumping in that. And if it's good, that we're all going to buy that Ardnahoe, so that distilleries have the signal, keep the price decent for the most people. And if you want to release a high end, okay, with a higher price, do it. But please keep one reference at least in the core range we can buy and be satisfied with. That was my positive rant. And negative.
Thanks for that, Gary.
I don't know what your thoughts think about that.
Yeah, no, you make some interesting points. And
I was very surprised, honestly. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, I think it definitely does seem to be the way
Didn't expect that.
The distilleries are premiumizing whiskies for sometimes, I suppose, for social media as well as sort of corporate and other events. Prices are definitely getting out of control for the stuff that us as whiskey enthusiasts really love. So yeah, it's a shame that we're seeing more and more whiskies getting more and more.
I see a comment. Sorry, from Alan. Yeah, I wanted to answer. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I wanted just to answer to Alan. Yes, but it's a craft distillery. The cost is way higher than corporate industrial size Glenlivet. I mean, a big distillery. So you cannot ask the same price. It's something I think people don't understand. I wanted to touch about that also. It's the contrast between the price of a distillery. We talk about that prior to the live show, right? The contrast, Mac was not there, but I'm sure he'll agree. You cannot ask the same price for the whiskey if there are 70 people, let's say Bruichladdich, Springbank, etc. Even if now, okay, Bruichladdich is under a bigger umbrella, or Rémy Cointreau, we get that. But we cannot ask the same price from a distillery whose craft uses local stuff, etc., materials, and one who's industrial sized with a big backup, past of a lot of cask, nothing to have to wait to have cash flow, etc. You cannot compare the two and ask the same price from Glenfiddich 12 and let's say Springbank 10. You will never have the same price. People have to understand that.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
said, that doesn't mean it has to be the most expensive possible.
Yeah, and exactly. If you look at a big distillery that's say Diageo, they're going to have a supply of barrels from the US at cost price. They're not having to pay retail for them. They're also, producing millions of liters a year versus thousands or tens of thousands of liters. So it's a different scale, and the cost that they can buy fuel at and things like that, cost they can buy barley at, it definitely, they've got the economies of scale. Plus they've got, I suppose, the fact that they're producing stuff in volumes gives them the benefit of that supply chain.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like some of these long-standing Scottish distilleries, we have to remember they've been around for hundreds of years, and they've got
refined their craft further and further and become more economical.
Yeah, and their stills have been going for years. They haven't got to pay the stills off. They've got whatever deals with house rents and whatnot that aren't that expensive. The big one is it's their cask choices, because especially some of these the cheaper like supermarket ones, like picking on Glenfiddich again. They're using whiskey barrels that have been round the rafters so many times it's unreal. That barrel literally doesn't cost anything anymore because they've used it. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth fill. And that's the reason why they can keep doing it so cheaply. But a lot of these newer distilleries that have to stand out have to use incredible casks that are expensive, and they've got to make their money back for the first 3 years of no earnings or whatever, So, yeah,
and
I think
also relationships with things like winemakers in Spain and stuff, establishing the costs that they can buy, their sherry soaked or sherry seasoned cask for. Completely different to, say, a distillery starting up in England or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if Diageo want some sherry cask finished stuff, they just buy a bodega and make some sherry, and then they sell themselves the casks.
Exactly.
Whereas some the new people aren't going to be able to do that. So yeah, I think we're slowly unlearning that age statement is. It's important. I'm not going to say it's not important. I would rather see a 3 on a bottle than nothing. But it's the actual number doesn't actually really make any difference because it's the wood it was in that's the important thing.
Yeah, definitely. So let's move on. So we can talk about original bottlings versus independent bottlers, because obviously one of the things that I've seen is that whiskey is obviously getting more expensive. So where is the value? And obviously, if there's a distillery you like, the value can often be in an independent bottler, because you often get non-chill filtered, natural colour, 46% minimum, and the price is often the same or less. You also tend to get bourbon cask versions when distilleries favour other cask types and finishes. So you get, the distillery character coming through a lot more. And the number of independent bottlers these days is vast. It's definitely there's definitely a lot of choice out there. So what are your guys' thoughts on independent bottlings versus distillery bottlings? Is there more value there, or is it just me?
I think, Toby, you're absolutely right. It depends, obviously. There are some independent bottlers who are starting to fall in love with their story, and we're seeing pricing on those creeping up at the moment. But yeah, in general, an IB is a great opportunity, right, to get an interesting profile or a single cask, which if it was, especially if single casks are released kind of under a more core range type umbrella or limited releases, as we've seen from Diageo, they can be insanely expensive when intrinsically, not the same identical liquid, but the same caliber of liquid can be found much cheaper and much more readily available.
Yeah, I assume you're referencing the special releases that Diageo do every year, where they're insanely priced. Just
exactly, as one example, right? Where they are, they do. I've tried some of them. So obviously, as always, some are great, some are less so, but they do give a unique opportunity to try something from a big distillery, but
with a unique price.
With a very unique price point. I think independent bottlers are a good way to go. But one thing that I think sometimes with the amazing caliber of people that we've got in the chat and you legends with me tonight, it's we're part of a group of people who actually are even aware of this concept of OBs and IBs and the whole mechanics of whiskey. And we form really a small minority of that, right? We often, the vast majority of sales are blends, which companies do find, keep at very low prices. The majority of whiskey sold in supermarkets. So I think that, it's sort of part of what we do. We touched on this earlier, but part of what we do to make more and more consumers aware that there are alternatives to buying expensive bottles at duty free, to buying expensive bottles in the supermarket, and the independent bottlers do exist, and they're readily available often, and they're a great source, right?
Yeah. That's just made me think of something for the to inject into our next topic as well. So I'll come back to what I was thinking in a bit. But yeah, you're right. There must be people out there that don't even know where to turn when it comes to independent bottlers, because they see a brand that they're not familiar with. They see something where they can't compare apples with apples because the product isn't the same to something that's coming out of the distilleries. So they don't know what they're getting. Whereas obviously an original bottling will taste pretty much the same time and time again. So I think it's definitely an interesting prospect for people that are totally new to independent bottlers. Where is the value? Because they're taking a chance with a brand they're not familiar with and something that they can't easily compare. And they might spend 50, 60 plus pounds on a bottle, and they don't know if it's going to be rubbish or not. So, and the problem I suppose you do have is it's very difficult for us as YouTube channels to review that sort of stuff in a timely manner, because it might be single cask and there might be 250 bottles of it, and you review it and there's none left. So it's a really difficult thing to help people in that landscape. But obviously, you're always going to take a chance with an independent bottler, but once you find one that works for you, you'll find that generally their liquid will be stuff that you like, or maybe they do a distillery that you can't get elsewhere. So, some distilleries only sell to certain independent bottlers. So that's an interesting thing. There's an interesting comment from Alan. He's just put that too much IB finishing. Yeah, I think that's definitely become a lot more common these days with sherry, port, and things like that. They're putting stuff in more and more sort of cask to season, and sometimes you then hide that distillery character because maybe the liquid wasn't that good to start with.
Yeah, well, the flip side of the independent bottling thing, and single cask bottling as well, is of course that while the marketing always says that we have selected from the finest casks, having seen a little bit behind the scenes of some various projects, both in Japan and in Scotland.
Greg's agreeing.
Yeah, often people are actually offered one
rubbish.
cask,
or the
take it or leave it.
Yeah,
right? It's like the demand now, right, on cask bottlings is absolutely insane. I can tell you, the guys who follow my channel know I recently put out a video mentioning that there are it feels like an infinite number of high quality whiskey bars in Japan, and almost every single one of them for their anniversary puts out a single cask bottling, and you're there thinking, not all of these people are selecting from 20 or 30 samples. They're often just literally being told, this is it, bottle it or not. And I don't think that just applies to a small bar. I think that, and I know that does apply even to some of the big or medium-sized independent bottlers. So yeah, we're all taking a chance on liquid sometimes, and that liquid is often not cheap.
Yeah, I've also heard stories of the likes of Diageo really cutting down on the bottlers that they'll sell their stock to now, whereas before that lots of their distilleries, they just sell whatever you wanted. They either sell you a cask or you come and fill your own. And now there's a lot less choice as they're realizing there's obviously a premium to it. They're trying to be more selective, and whether or not that's to make more money for themselves with their own releases, or whether or not it's to restrict what goes out into the market, I don't know. And it might be different for different big distilleries. They might have different thoughts on how they sell their stock and how they control it.
Definitely. I mean, I'm just picking up on a comment from Welsh Toro, who's saying about he says, I shouldn't mention this, but but the Master of Mole. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
He's
no.
like, they're selling much better stuff than some of the old guys. And I was going to mention these guys tonight because they're not getting much love on the Oswars, I have to admit, but I vote for them all the time as one of my favourite independent bottlers now because
Yeah, me too.
they're just fantastic. You know, I mean, this is a bad example, this Blair Athol 16, because when they released this, it was kind of like a they snuck it out and they stuck it on there for it was 35 quid for a 16-year-old Blair Athol at 52.8%. But they put it out without any emails because they wanted people that like me who are checking it all the time for good deals to get it. And that's what happened, basically. It got into the hands of proper, like, you know, fans of the brand. And it was sold out straight away. Fantastic. But yeah, I've got heaps of them behind here, and I've bought every single one, I should say as well. I know I'm well known for taking freebies off of industry, but I bought every single one of them because they're just fantastic value.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I bought several of their independent bottle releases. And normally, it's not the ones that I would normally pick. I pick them because they're insanely ridiculous prices, and I sort of think this is so cheap, it's too good to be true. So I normally pick them just for, you know, the fact you can't really lose because they're not overly expensive. And you know, if they're mediocre, then you haven't lost much money. But if they're not mediocre and they really do shine, then yeah, you've got something that you'll probably never have again. So it's really really interesting. And normally there's something on Twitter where somebody says, "Oh, I picked this up from Master Moore. It was delivered next day, and it's fantastic." So, you know, suddenly the stock depletes.
Jump on it.
Yeah, you've got to jump on it. You've got to be quick.
I mean, and conversely, there's one. I mean, so a couple I've bought off of there. There's the 6-year-old Speyside distillery, which is basically clear. It was like new make.
Yeah, I've got that.
You got that, yeah. And it's still on my shelf because it's a tough drink, isn't it?
Was it 25 quid?
It was, yeah. I think it was less. It was like, it was such a low amount of money.
Was it 19.99?
19
yeah,
quid,
it was ridiculous. And you can't not give it a go just for the fun of it. It's a good conversation starter, isn't it? And something you can share with people. And it's, you know, it doesn't matter if people like it or don't like it. It's something that you'll probably never see again.
And conversely to that, they also did a 3-year-old wheated bourbon, which I covered on my channel a few times now, and it's still in stock, despite me constantly telling people it's 35 quid, it's really, really good, but because it's got a big 3 on the front of it, everyone's like, 3-year-old whiskey for 35 quid, I don't want to pay that, but it's a bourbon. Yeah, it's well worth it, I promise, but you made a good point earlier about it being, especially for YouTubers, it's really tough to do independent bottled stuff because it's either gone straight away, or, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but independent bottled whiskies are easily my most underwatched videos by a long shot because people just don't care. Yeah,
the people that do care are in small numbers, and the people that don't care are the ones that just want mainstream big brands. And
I sometimes get. Yeah, sorry, Toby. I'm just saying. It reminds me because I sometimes get asked, why don't I review more Chichabu whiskey? Well, for those that don't know, Chichabu is the 5th largest whiskey maker in Japan. But the vast majority of their releases are essentially single casks, you know, or very small batch bottlings, distributed either, you know, a release for a certain department store in Japan, a release for maybe a department store overseas, you know, for an individual market, for an individual bar. I could tell you that it's the greatest whiskey I've ever had, but no, but you know, you're never going to try it. So, and people are not going to be searching that. It has no search engine optimization value, and it's not helpful for people, apart from perhaps to guide them to say, well, overall, you know, several of these bottles prove that this distillery knows how to make good liquid. So I guess the one value of doing a few independent bottling, let's say, you know, you reviewed a lot of Thompson Brothers bottles and were consistently positive, you're signaling to people that you can trust these guys on the whole. You know, if they're putting their name to something, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be good liquid. But
exactly. And I think that's why as a YouTuber, sometimes you pick the stuff that you're passionate about, but if nobody's interested in it, you know, on the whole, then you sometimes have to pick a bit more mainstream stuff, because if people aren't engaging with that content, then there is obviously limited value in it. But yet you can still have it as a bottle on the shelf and you can still enjoy it.
Exactly.
And obviously, if you get value out of it, then that's all that matters. But producing a video which takes quite a long time for very little interaction from people is sometimes a struggle to continue to do that.
Yeah, it is a good point. It is a good point, and I do try to like I was just put in the chat there. Basically, I cover whatever I want to cover. I do some some prioritization, as I'm sure we all do. You look at it. Yeah, I've got bottles sat in my review queue that have been there for well over a year because just more interesting things have come along. I've got an Auchentoshan 12-year-old down there that I probably could cover and get some good views on it because it's a generally available whiskey. But it doesn't fill me with any kind of enthusiasm, so my video would be pretty boring, I think. So,
and like me, you must also get bottles that effectively. you must also get bottles that that you intend to put in the queue, or they're in the queue, but end up getting drunk and never actually make the light of YouTube. So because they miss their moment sometimes, that it's not ever going to be the right time to do it because something else more exciting came along.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've got the two McMira DLX Brooks whiskies, the 1 and 2.
Oh yeah.
Like Dan Somerton Club was selling them for 65 quid each, and I bought both of them off him, thinking, that'll make a nice double video, and I've just never done it. No, well, that's now it's completely irrelevant. You can't buy them anymore.
And
so,
yeah,
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll still make the video because content is content is content, but it's
and there's still people out there that bought it and had it.
Only me.
And maybe compare notes.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
So let's move on to non-age statement whiskey versus age statements, because I think obviously one thing that we're seeing is the rise of more bottles that don't have a number on, and there's obviously lots of reasons for that, but I'm certain it's mostly economic. But interestingly, Mac made a point, and that's why I sort of said I'd move it on to this segment, about duty-free. Well, duty-free is an interesting prospect because you often see a lot of whiskies that you can't see anywhere else. You can't buy anywhere else. So when you walk into an airport and you see a non-age statement bottle from a big distillery, you've got nothing to compare it against. You've got no reference point. And that can be really difficult as a consumer because you try to Google stuff and there's nothing about it. As YouTube channels, we can't easily just go and buy it unless we're going abroad. So it's difficult for us to cover it even if people wanted it. So you very rarely find many reviews.
It's not for us.
A reference. Yeah, but they don't have a reference.
It's not
either.
For us, sorry.
Exactly.
It's for tourists.
Yeah. But I suppose occasionally there must be good examples of non-age statement duty-frees and even age statement
Just
duty-frees.
not for us.
But so I suppose what the point of this section is
yeah, probably.
Are there good non-age statement whiskies, or is it all about distilleries making more money by dropping the age statement?
Oh, I mean, a loaded question, because the whole thing's a money-making game, right? If they weren't making money, we wouldn't be here. But I know what you mean. Quality doesn't have to be diminished, does it, to make money? That's the important factor. But yeah, it's getting expensive.
Make more money.
I've got I've got some Glencadams here that are no age statement that are 45 quid, which is good value, really. But in the grand scheme, people will think it isn't. That Port Soy I was showing off earlier, that's what 55, 60 quid, which is, it's exceptional quality, but it's got no age statements. That'll put people off. And talking about this little bad boy as well, as always, the old Sir Davis Beyonce, 80 quid I paid for this, 80 quid. And it's, it's all right. It's a good drop. I enjoy it, but it's definitely not worth that. But it's definitely a struggle.
I think we discussed the Sir Davis in private, but it has its audience, and its audience will probably buy lots of it, and they'll probably pay through the nose even more, especially if they're buying it at a bar or whatever. But it may well sell hundreds of thousands of bottles, but as Greg says, it's not for us.
With going back to your point, Toby,
I would like to point something
Greg.
In the chat. Okay. No.
Go ahead, Greg.
Greg, go ahead. Greg, go ahead.
No, just wanted to say that some people in the chat did point some interesting points about what I will call the positioning or the marketing position or choices of a distillery towards its audience. Kilchoman, it is true. Danny speaks truth. In the beginning, like I said in the preparation of the live show, there are several kinds of NAS. For me, I did a big video about NAS. There are 4 different kinds of NAS, basically, for me. I don't have the time to explain all. It's just my point of view. But about what he says, I think Kilchoman did a big mistake. Not to switch from no age statement to a low age statement, such as a permanent 8 years old, for instance, and then a limited release of the 10 years old. Just like, I think, sorry to be biased maybe, but just like they did, Armoric, the Ranghem distillery, the French, they didn't have, French distilleries are very young, basically, to put a long story short. So what they did in a few years ago, they did a 10 years old permanent release, but every year, but only limited to a certain amount of bottles because they don't have enough stock. But yet again, like Jim would say, they still release a 10 years old every year. And now a 15 years old is going to be the third release. Now, I think, very excited for the third because I love so much the 15, as Menno knows. But the point is, second people, I don't see it now, says, and then they move to a 16 years old, Kilchoman, with 250 euros and stuff. So nothing in between the no age statement, young from a craft distillery, okay. But now they're 16 plus years old, so they're no longer a young distillery. So why do they put that price for a 16 years old, where they could release a 12, 14 at lower price? So it's a kind of, I don't know the term in economy, it's playing the game of the rarity for the maximum profit. And I don't like that. And I will be very curious about the sales of the 16 years old in the UK and abroad. I don't know if someone knows how it goes, if it's still available, etc. I'll be very curious if it had success or not. Not speaking about the quality, but the fact it's a bad value per se on the paper. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting that some
distilleries still on sale.
Yeah, I personally don't know enough about Kilchoman to answer that, but yeah, it's interesting when certain distilleries do push non-age statement more than they probably could.
You see, there's no intermediate reference.
Yeah.
What you found in Japan as the big company started to get a run on their age stock is what Stefan van Eycken, the author of Whiskey Rising, which for those of you who have any interest in Japan is the definitive book on Japanese whiskey. He calls it the crossfade to NAS. So basically, you know, if you look at the Yamazaki lineup back 15 years ago, there was a 10 year, that was the youngest age statement and the youngest bottle, full stop. There was a 10, a 12, an 18, and a 25. And what they did is they cancelled the 10 and they replaced it effectively with a NAS. And so, of course, the NAS gives them freedom. They say the average age is 8 years. Exactly what Moan is, if that's the mean mode or median, they don't say. And, you know, what that means is unclear, but it's given a lot of Japanese distilleries, well, when I say a lot, I mean basically Suntory and Nikka, the flexibility to have, you know, a bottle out there with more availability than their age statements. And so that's been their motivation for basically putting a NAS out there. And then they've given it a lot of the marketing dialogue about how, you know, consumers shouldn't focus on the age, but the focus on the quality of the liquid. But then they've priced those bottles.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, no, because then age doesn't matter.
Because just 3 seconds, when I started my journey, Mac, all the advertising was saying age matters, and now age doesn't matter. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's where it feels very disingenuous that the same companies are saying that. And one thing that has worried me a bit about the pricing that I've seen for a lot of the new releases in Japan, and indeed the new releases for a lot of the new distilleries in Scotland, is if you're charging X, where X is a very high number for your first 3-year release, or your no age statement release that we know by definition must be at most 3.5 years old, then what the hell are you going to be charging when you have a 10-year, right? It's going to be absolutely insane. And so that is, I find very, very disturbing and very worrying.
Yeah, I think interestingly, we see it.
It's insane what Alan just said. It's insane.
Oh, about the
price.
Yeah. Interesting. We see it in food, especially in the UK. A lot of food and drink manufacturers apply something called shrinkflation, where you pay the same price and you get less. Obviously, that's the same example with NAS. They take away the age statement. They make it non-age statement so they can put any age, but you're still paying the same price.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of consumers, I think especially where it is goods that you, I suppose, need to buy, you probably would prefer to pay less. But if they're goods that you like to buy, shouldn't you still get the same quality and the same size and pay more? I'm wondering if the reason retailers do it is because, and whiskey producers the same, the reason they reduce what you get for the same money is they're worried about putting the prices up. Because if they put the price of a bottle up by £5, then the majority of whiskey drinkers who aren't us, we're the minority, majority of whiskey drinkers would just switch to another brand. I'm not saying they will, but I think that's possibly what they're worried about. They'll lose some of their market share because their bottle's 10% more than it used to be. And people, I think, are, more price aware than they are quality aware when it comes to, mass market whiskey. But the same is applied to, more niche whiskey.
Maybe they have less money too.
Yeah, but
I think. Sorry, go on,
Yeah,
Toby.
go on.
Yeah. Sure,
No,
sure.
I'm just trying to.
Now that's it.
Yeah.
I gotta. Yeah. No.
Yeah, with everything effectively reducing in quality or size as a result of not wanting to put prices up, would customers prefer the prices to go up and the quality remain? Because obviously we don't get that choice. The manufacturer makes that for us, and obviously that's what we're complaining about. But we also complain on the flip side that the prices are going up.
Well, I think the issue is I really feel that the price is going up and the quality is of what we're getting delivered is going down, especially from some of these large corporations. And so we're taking it up the wazoo, It's not a great situation.
No,
I think what we've seen. Sorry, go on, Toby.
Yeah, no, mine can wait. So I'll let you finish.
Well, no, I mean, it's just, I think the way you've made an interesting point and you've got me thinking is I think, we have to be clear again with differentiating between smaller producers and larger producers. But I'm talking about, the big three.
Yeah. New distilleries.
On earth. They know who they are.
Yeah.
The third number 3 is very much in my wheelhouse. And I think what we've reached is a kind of enshittification in the whiskey world, right? For those that don't know, enshittification is a term that was coined by Cory Doctorow. And he talked about technology. A very good example is kind of Uber, So first you capture the supply side. Remember when Uber was like so much cheaper than getting a black cab or a taxi. So you capture us, download the app, we're locked into the system and we become heavy users mainly because of the price. And then they lock in so that's the demand side. Then they lock in the supply side by making sure that the drivers are well taken care of. And once they've got the whole ecosystem, then they start to raise pricing for us and reduce the payment to the drivers to maximize profit. And it really felt with the big hikes that we saw from the big three distillers on earth that we were having our enshittification of whiskey moment. And what's been fascinating is to see that has completely backfired on them, right? Because we're now at a point where you can actually, if you explore the secondary market, you can buy bottles for less than their RRP, which, can you imagine telling somebody that 3 years ago, right? During the whole whiskey hype and the whole auction boom. It really is quite incredible. But yeah, we've been enshittified. We've all been locked in, and now, you know, they've raised these pricing on us. But what they've found is we're not like Uber, and we're not like users of an app. We can go and you know, we are not brand loyal, and we can easily go. You know, the number of people in the comments saying they'll never buy Talisker 18, for example, right, is a complete backfiring. You can triple the price again, but, you know, and if nobody's buying it, then it doesn't matter what it costs.
Yeah, and interestingly, as a reference, Talisker 18, as I mentioned earlier, was £70 in 2014, and then all of a sudden, 2021, it jumped massively to £175. I think it was like £85 in 2021. And it jumped to 175 and then 185, and now it's 200. So that's ridiculous jumps in price. But if you compare it with something like Arran 10-year-old, Arran 10-year-old has had lots of little price increases over the last 10 years. And if you look at its retail, you know, its full retail price today, it's only gone up by what inflation says it should be up by.
Exactly.
So today we're paying 10 years later what inflation has done to that whiskey. We're not paying more. And I think if customers had lots of little price increases, or even at a push, you know, less but bigger price increases, as long as it is representative of what that whiskey has cost over time to make, I think we wouldn't be too disappointed. But it's really difficult to stomach when these price increases just appear from nowhere.
Well, they do the classic, don't they? They remove a bottle from market for a bit. They create a bit of a void in what we want because we love it so much, and then they bring it back with an inevitable price increase. You know, citing stock issues or something like that. But ultimately, it's always the same. It's always the same situation. I say always. There might be a few occasions where it's not been the same, but I mean, you can bet when, like, leaning on Mac's experience, you can bet when they start selling Yamazaki 12 over here again, you know, or whatever, you know, whatever age statement Japanese whiskey, it's going to be horrendously priced. But that's that. The trouble is, if people are still paying for it, it will always be the case. You know, it's selling out straight away. You know, that Talisker is selling. It's selling at that price. You know, so it's not about whether whether it's costing that much. It's what people will pay. And if people stop paying it, move on to something else, then who knows what happens.
If they're selling less casks
not from us.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. But if they're selling less casks of whiskey that go into that 18-year-old, then that means there's more available for the 10-year-old, and you know, then they produce more and bottle it younger, and leave more stocks less stocks to age for the 18-year-old because less people buy it. And that also then hopefully means that, like, Talisker 10-year-old stays more affordable as a result, because they premiumised the higher age statements.
Yeah, it must be like, I mean, obviously I've never worked in a distillery. It must be incredibly difficult to forecast for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years in the future. When you're laying that cask down,
you don't know how much people are going to buy.
You know, nothing. Yeah, and it's so I get that it must be difficult to sort of sort all that out. And I don't want to criticize any distilleries particular for
it's their job and the blenders' job as well.
Absolutely, and you know, like I said, they'll sell it for what they can sell it for. Some will do the honourable thing and they'll bring it and for a good value, but it is what it is. Yeah, like Reb saying there that how well is the new Lefroy 18-year-old selling at 100 and whatever 70 something? Hopefully not well, but
well, interestingly, Scott Matheson's made a good comment about Glasgow knocking it out of the park. Obviously, their prices are pretty cheap, and I'll mention my no nonsense bottle that I got today. It's I've opened it already. It tastes amazing. There's not much of it left in the shops, so I'm going to pour myself a small dram of it. I can't obviously pour too much too often because I'll have none of it left. So but this is obviously 60.1%. It's 5 years old, which is young, but it's obviously peated whiskey aged in a sherry cask. I'm obviously doing the sales for you, Vin, and it's pretty stunning for what it is, and it was £59, and that's ridiculous compared to what other Scottish distilleries are putting out.
Yeah, I mean, I will say with that, like, and all credit to Glasgow for doing it, because they've every step of the way, wherever there was a cost saving to make, it chipped away at their margin by their choice. So they basically every turn they were like, "Oh, we'll take the cost for that." The labeling, we'll take the cost for that. So they've done really well, and they've treated it as a marketing exercise. But I think I said to you, Mac, didn't I? I said I would say this is probably a £65-70 bottle that's been priced at 59. So yeah, it's exceptionally good value for what it is, considering it's 60.1% as well. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Actually, just to clarify, because I just noticed the absence of something on the bottle. Is it single cask?
I'm going to say I believe so.
Okay, it's just I couldn't find it said it on there anywhere. So
yeah, it doesn't specifically say it, but yeah, sure. It was. It's a virgin oak.
It reads like it is, but it doesn't say it definitely is. So
do you know what? Actually, funny that it's what it says on here is Pedro Jimenez sherry cask on the box. So maybe it isn't.
Oh yeah, cask. Yeah.
I'll check.
Okay, to be fair, the fact that they're it's obviously single malt, and I doubt many barrels were put together to make this batch. So just sort of clarify while I'm drinking it.
Yeah. Truth be told, I actually don't know that. I've been running on the assumption it's been single cask, but maybe not. Maybe it's but well, the one thing I will say is there's 80 bottles of it, so it's actually a split cask. So it's difficult to say whether it was there would have been hundreds of bottles if it weren't used for something else. But we've worked hard on this one, so it's I'm pretty excited about it. But the way things are going, I don't think it's going to make it to general sale at the moment. It seems to be selling really well on Discord.
Well, Alan the Whiskey Friends made an interesting comment. Obviously, if you're after Talisker 18, then you should really put your money on Legic 18, because that's massive value at the minute. And even their Naz Rioja cask is incredibly good value as well. I've got a bottle of that here. So the Sinclair series Rioja cask. That's tasty, and
there's a couple of good points in the chat I want to pick up on. Toby. One of them is from Gregor, who absolutely illustrated Vin's point about taking a whiskey off the shelf, with pointing out Lagavulin 16 is a great example of that, right? Disappeared for a few months and then boom, jumped from up 50% in price, right? It was absolutely insane. And then Bonaparte whiskey. Interesting because, of course, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy are a big player in the market, and they are obviously a designer goods brand, and designer goods meaning watches and handbags and clothing, and also liquid now as well. So he's saying that they're treating it like handbags or watches, and it's symbol. And it's interesting because I was talking to a few people. I was lucky enough to attend all 3 days of Whisky Show down in London, 2024. And, you know, they don't shy away from it. Some of these big players, you know, I was playing up a little bit and saying, oh, well, you know, okay, your liquid is premium priced, you know, and basically they were admitting to me that, of course, there is a collectability element to, you know, why they're pricing it at that point. And I think we've seen a lot of these bottles become Veblen goods. You know, Veblen goods are goods whose desirability increases as the price increases. They become status symbols, like a Rolex watch or a Ferrari. And that's what's happened with a lot of the big threes bottlings now. I mean, Suntory have just put out their Tsukuriwaka 2024 collection in the UK. The Mizunara 18 year is £1,600 for a bottle.
There's,
you know, the liquid is pretty good. I'm putting out a video about it, and it's.
I just tried 2 of those 4.
Yeah, but
I won't buy.
Well, there's a complete disconnect.
It's not
between
bad, but it's not worth even 10%. Half of the price, it's not worth for me.
Well, I think that for me is a fascinating point, Greg.
That's
like
just my opinion, but
no. With me and Vin have discussed this because we had a chance to meet up last month and reviewed a few bottles that have some steep retail prices. One over £1,000, and one
I've tried before from them. That's
right. So, you know, there comes a point, I think.
Oh, I don't hear everyone. I have too many cuts. That's frustrating.
I think that there comes a point very soon
I don't
where
hear no one now.
Sorry, Greg. Are you okay?
Is your audio dropping out, Greg?
I'm trying to get hold, but there are cuts. So, yeah, sometimes. So it's hard to. But go ahead, please, Mac. I hope I'll hear you.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that I think there's a general point, you know, Toby, as well, about, like, let's say we have 18-year-old liquid, right?
Everyone is.
What is the maximum price that any bottle of whiskey that has an 18-year age statement should be? And I know that's a difficult question. For me, some of these prices that you're seeing on some of these bottles are sort of so far beyond even a discussion of value. I think you can have a debate.
It has changed
about whether an 18-year-old should cost 80 or 100 or maybe even £200, right? But if you start to put prices of 500 or 1,000 on them, right? Like there's no. Oh, well, you know, if this was 450, it would be okay, but 500's a bit too much, right? And I find that quite interesting and fascinating, you know, that some of this pricing is just going
no rationality, yeah.
There you go. So Reb there, thanks for throwing that up there, saying, you know, an 18-year-old should be no more than 129, okay? That's a good starting point for a conversation.
Yeah, but for who?
What do you think?
Oh, if you knew what I tried yesterday. Oh my God. I tried the first. Yeah.
Yeah, go on, good. What did you try?
And no, it depends on every market's production. I mean, France, I know now that for a fact, France previously stated the whiskey was 40 years old. There's even a book saying there's 40 years old whiskey in France. Yes or no? The first ever whiskey released in 1983 wasn't 100% French. So if we really want to be honest and start with the first Armoric single malt 100% French, 1998. So why I say that? Because 2 years ago I tried the first 21 years old from a distillery. Because it was something rare, it was put into a decanter, fancy decanter. It was 500 euros. I thought it was the maximum. But no, this year we had the first 18 years old from a known distillery, Roselier. But because they wanted to do a shock, to do something, I mean, very fancy, very memorable, let's say, or they think so. They choose to put it in a Baccarat bottle, but there's a case. The whiskey is not in the Baccarat bottle. There's a Baccarat decanter on the side that you can put it in after you bought it. But at the show, and I published a picture on LinkedIn, the bottle itself is very simple. But because it's in Baccarat, because it... Hear me?
Oh, you're breaking up there.
Oh, you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You were just breaking up.
Oh man, still there. I don't know if anybody hears me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Greg. Oh, I'll let you know if he comes back in a sec.
Poor old Greg. He's struggling with his internet connection, I think.
Yeah, he's trying to get fiber installed, and he's had trouble. Right. Oh, I think we've done back.
I remember what that was like when I first started my channel. I was on 1 megabyte a second, and it took me like 7 hours to upload a video. I was going to swear then, but it was really bad.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get it.
A real problem, can't it? Should we move on?
Better laugh at it. Yeah, but I finished my thing because I think it's no.
Okay. You lost your train of thought.
Sorry?
You finished.
Yeah, no, just want to say, so this 18 years old, very nice, is sold 7,000 euros.
Wow.
I said it's a joke.
But that's just,
the owner and the distiller. He said, no, we wanted to do something special. But guess what? We're kept 30 liters to pour to the people for free in shows. So this makes no sense. It's generous in a way, but we want to release, we can buy. He said next ones maybe we'll do something else. So what do you think of that? 7,000 euros. Compared to yesterday, I tried, and you know that if you follow me on social, yesterday I tried Hibiki 30 years old. For the first time of my life. The only one of the range I have never tried. This is not a 2024 release. Some people in the show thought it was a 2024 release. It's impossible, and Mac knows why. So, I mean, the fact that it was an old release, they sell it 6,500 euros here. How about that? So what's the best? An 18 years old French at 7,000, or an old Japanese prestigious brand at 6,500? Tell me, Mac.
I think we're both numbers are so completely insane that you're asking me to pass a very weird judgment, right, on something. But that's that's the world that we're living in now. Luckily,
what about a 20K?
The French one is not as established as Suntory.
Yes, but as we're seeing from the chat, people seem to think 100 or 130 is a good benchmark for an 18, right? And maybe we can extrapolate that from that yes, maybe 500 or even 750 might be a benchmark for a 30-year-old, maybe even 1,000. But when you start talking about 4,000, 5,000 for a plus for bottles,
20,000
of liquid, of an agro-industrial spirit, which can be produced in mass, right? It's just absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that there's no justification at all for this cheap distillate to be priced at these insane markups. Apart from because the way that this polo shirt here is, of course, Uniqlo. But if it has a little mark on it of a man riding a horse, then it would cost 10 times as much.
Yeah. Voila.
Yeah, I suppose value is perceived by those that want to buy it, but there must be products that manufacturers make at obscene prices that they don't really have the market for. That must happen as well.
Right.
I mean, we were talking about all these 18-year-olds and whatnot. I
But
pulled this off the
thing I
shelf
wanted-
earlier,
Yeah.
but I've got here a 7-year-old Cotswolds, which I'm not going to open at any point, I don't think. But this is their fill your own in the distillery. But it's their first age statement, proper age statement. But that was 125 quid, and I still can't believe I spent it. To be honest, I still can't believe I spent it. But I was with Mac. We were having a great day, and I was like, God damn, I've never done one of these ones before, so I'm going to do it. But yeah, that's a 7-year-old whiskey for 125 quid. But
that's it. This is the whole point about brand, right? Is that there was value for you in that transaction, right?
Absolutely.
We were having a good time. It's a memento of our visit together. So I'm at least 65 quid of that value. You've got a great relationship with the distillery. It's a local distillery for you. Dan Zoll, the founder, I got to meet him finally for the first time at Whisky Show 2024. Vin, I mentioned our visit. He's a fantastic guy. He's a sort of guy that, of course, he's there and he's in business, right? But you want to support that business. He's producing things that we enjoy. And remember, a bottle of whiskey is different as well from a bottle of wine. Yeah. I find wine pricing quite insane because you can drink a bottle of wine in an evening, and of course you can drink a bottle of whiskey in an evening, but if anybody did, perhaps we wouldn't be seeing them in the chat or indeed host on this channel next time, right? So, you could say, well, the experience of 700 milliliters of liquid with an average ABV of 50%, could deserve a price point of 100 or whatever. But and for me, Cotswolds pricing something at that price is a completely different story, and we've discussed this before, right? Than Diageo pricing something at that price point.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, price is crazy. I mean, that's the whole point of this stream, right? It's price is crazy, but I think basically everybody, the one bit of advice I can give to everybody is never spend any more than you're comfortable spending. If you're comfortable spending it, then fine. I think I can't remember who said it earlier. Somebody on the post was saying, just after we said about Yamazaki, and they were like, whatever it is, I'll pay for it. And I was like, well, that's why they get away with charging it, because people will do that. And there are some things that I will literally just throw money at. No word of a lie. And some things that I'll look at it and go, nah, that's not for me. I'll let that one miss. But that's exactly what you have to do. You have to go, right, today I can't afford this, can't afford that. Try to forget about FOMO if you can. I know it's difficult. I'm being part of that right now. People are like, I'm pushing my Discord to try and sell my bottle, but there we are.
Oh, I don't hear you, Vin, again.
We can hear you, Greg.
I think something that would be great is to do a blind tasting and say how much would you like to pay again? I don't know when you hear me, so it's very frustrating.
Yeah, no, we can hear you. I think a blind tasting is definitely a good barometer of what people are prepared to pay when it comes to liquid, because obviously, I don't think anybody says that, right? In a blind tasting, let's take 4-6 people experimented then, and instead of saying what distillery it is, did you discover it? No, how much would you pay for this? And then after there will be a reveal with the price. Could be interesting. Because talking about 18 years old, I just retried the Tomatin 18 here, which is a lovely whiskey. And do you know how much it is in France now? I mean, not going online on the platforms but by its French distributor. Can you guess how much it's in France now? It's absolutely insane for me. Just this. I'm assuming it's more than 100 euros then.
No.
200 euros.
183.
Yeah, it's almost 200 euros.
How about that? 183 by Duga, its distributor. And I heard in Germany you can maybe had it for 80 or so. So it's kind of monopoly. La Maison de Whisky, Maison Duga, they do a monopoly, so they can put every price they want. And some will buy it, not me, at that price. But don't know, there were other things to say about, I mean, there's also knowledge statement with older stuff in it, in indie bottling, compass box, etc. So I think the question is way more complex about the knowledge statement, but because there are also blenders who do remarkable work to provide.
Oh, losing you, Greg.
Are we still there?
Yeah. Every time you stop talking and ask if you're still there, you come back. You must have a selective filter on your microphone.
And nobody's talking, or
Yeah. You hear what you want to hear, Greg.
Yeah, it's like when you got a phone with a bad signal and people only hear you when you say, "Are you still there?"
I think one thing that has been interesting about all this is, like I said earlier, you know, we're now seeing bottles below the RRP in the auction market. And at Whisky Show 2024, there were certain releases that absolutely would have sold out on the first day. You know what I mean? People would have lined up. But actually, come the Sunday, they were still around on the Whisky Show shelves. And that was both Scotch, but also some of the Japanese bottles. And so you are actually seeing consumers, I think, voting with their feet, as it were, and voting with their wallets, more importantly.
Apologies to you all and to...
No, not at all. Greg, good to have you back. Just saying, you know, and it'd be interesting to hear the perspective in France, but certainly what I saw in London was people not buying, you know, choosing not where the hype and the collectability and everything would have led to people deploying funds in the past. We're seeing that that's not the case. And so one wonders where the big corporations go from here, right? Do they have to backtrack now and admit that 50% price jumps on some of these core products or 100% price jumps, 200% was just not a good idea? Or is that where we're anchored to now? And kind of we have to sort of almost hope that inflation kind of catches up to this pricing.
Yeah, so it's an interesting point because they either have to bite the bullet and it doesn't sell and they just make it available for as long as they have to until it sells. You know, as you say, inflation catches up, or they have to do something about the pricing and drop it. So it's an interesting prospect. It could be that they hide those bottles and, you know, don't deliver as many to stores and, you know, I don't know, do something with them. But yeah, when you've got a product that you've over premiumized, you know, you've put it on a pedestal and there's nobody buying it, what do you do with it? Obviously, that's not our problem, but that could impact the other costs that we have to bear as consumers because they put the prices of other things up to compensate for the fact that
I'm sorry, guys. I think I should leave the live because it's so frustrating to keep up with conversation of each one and answer back and forth. Also, I mean, doesn't work. So I hope when I'll have a better connection. I don't even know if you hear me now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, right. But how much time? So I think I'm going to end up there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry because this very interesting conversation, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's getting worse. Yeah. All right. Well,
Yeah.
should we say bye to you, Greg? And thanks for taking part in this live. And you definitely gave us some interesting talking points and some interesting insights.
Yeah, I have to say bye. Bye. Well, somebody here.
Cheers, Greg.
Yeah.
Me
See you later.
Put 50p in the meter.
Yeah.
It's too first.
Bless him.
Right.
It's horrible, isn't it? When tech doesn't go your way. I mean, I know this is your first live stream, Toby, but I think we were.
I had lots of teething problems off air, but
yeah. Like I was just about to say when we were doing the pre-live chat, and I was like, I'm going to be in about 10 minutes, and on the little chat that we had going, Toby was like, I can't get my microphone to work. It's just
and that's
part,
because I had something else plugged in, and then I had to unplug it. So I got there in the end.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I've had so many tech issues. It's unreal in my time. So yeah, I feel for Greg.
Yeah, he was supposed to have a fibre broadband upgrade, and it hasn't happened yet. So yeah, I can't remember where we were, but I think the fact that we've obviously got these products that are this liquid that's been put on this super premium shelf, and us as consumers who are the purchasers of this stuff are suddenly priced out of the market because they say that we're not the intended market anymore, and as we're not prepared to pay that amount, we're sort of it's a sorry, buy. We've got other things that you can buy instead, but if you don't like it, go somewhere else. And I think it's a shame because they obviously haven't consulted us as consumers. They've consulted their board of directors and shareholders on how they can make more money, and they think that that's how they do it. But I suppose with brands like this, they must rely on a certain amount of brand loyalty. They want us to visit their distilleries. They want us to spend money with them regularly. But yet they start to, price us out of the market and go for the people that just want to spend money regardless. Who probably don't even care what's on the label. Whatever's fashionable will suit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. There's a bottle for everybody. There's a budget for everybody. Unfortunately, that's a sliding scale, and a few of us. I mean, I remember there's a couple of comments flying past about setting caps about how much they're willing to spend, and that's fine. I used to have a 50 quid cap, and I had to dissolve that probably 4 or 5 years ago because I just couldn't get good quality whiskey for less than 50 quid anymore. Which I know we still can, just about.
Yeah.
But...
Well, you make an interesting point that I was going to bring up. The fact that, and we're both Somerton Club subscribers. Obviously, we've both been a member for some time, and their price has always been £50 for a 50cl or larger bottle. And they've just got to the point where they can't buy good whiskey at £50 anymore. So, if they can't provide us with good quality whiskey, they've got to put the price up to get us things that we'll appreciate. Because the margins get tighter and tighter, and what's available to them to buy is getting harder. So there definitely is, I suppose, minimum pricing for quality, but maximum price is obviously getting silly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I had a walk through duty free on my way to Amsterdam to watch the World Series of Darts finals at the weekend, and I saw some discounts on some bottles. I mean, I never would have conceived that you would ever see, big brands like Oban, Mortlach, bottles discounted actually at duty free. So, like I say, I think those sorts of changes are happening, and and the question is will, do those brands care about us as a customer base? I think that's a very interesting point, Toby. You've got me thinking on that. I haven't quite figured out what my stance on that is, but it does feel, doesn't it? And I think that's why it hurts so many of the people. That's why it's such a big topic in the community, on the blogs and on WhiskyTube, right? It feels like a middle finger to, us very invested, very active supporters of this industry and this product. And that's why it's sort of quite an emotive topic for people.
I think we're feeling disenfranchised, aren't we, to the brands that we've supported and enjoyed the content they put out, and all of a sudden they're saying, sorry, it's not for you if you can't afford it.
That's such a good thing. That's such a good way of putting it, because I've just been going along with the whole vibe of, whatever. But yeah, you are right. It's just it is true. If I can't afford it, I don't buy it. And I have been priced out of a lot of brands that I do love. However, it's always been backfilled by brands that I have a real affinity with brand new distilleries, because they need us, we need them. So I'm happy to support them. And they're, I'm fine to leave the 20-plus-year-old whiskies to people that have got big pockets.
And there's only a few new distilleries that sort of take the piss with their pricing and think that they can premiumize from day one. But even they make that mistake the hard way, and they sort of fall from grace quite quickly. So
I've seen it with there's a whiskey distillery from Japan that just launched in the UK their core range bottles called Kanosuke. I think Vince heard of them, and now increasingly more and more people will have heard of them. When I reviewed their first single malt bottle, it was almost 14,000 yen. Now at current exchange rates, that's 70 quid. Which is, and their bottles are kind of in that sort of range. This is Japan pricing, of course. Back then, it was closer to 100 quid at the exchange rates at the time. And I did say, listen, this is at the upper end of what I feel comfortable paying, for something that's a new release of a 3-year-old whiskey. But I want to support these guys. I believe that you'll be hearing a lot more about them in future. They've been making shochu since 1883. They've been aging that shochu in barrels since 1957. I bought into the story. The people have integrity, and that's where I saw the extra sort of 20 quid or so, as something that I was willing to pay. But there, on the other hand, there's a distillery called Akeshi up in Hokkaido, who've branded themselves as the Isla of Japan. From the beginning, their single malt bottles were at current exchange rates about 90 quid. More so back, like I said, when they first started, more like 140 pounds. And they immediately went in on what's called a 24 season series. So for those that know, the Hibiki bottle has 24 sides, and that's to do with the seki, these little micro seasons in Japan. So they immediately went for this like collectible series, right? So immediately going for this collectability, they alternated their bottles, single malts and then blends involving Scotch, in their bottles as well. And frankly, I don't think we need an Isla of Japan. There's an Isla of Isla, and it seems to be pretty good at what it does. I don't think we need another one. So it's a different pricing strategy. And now they took their lead from Suntory, and their prices have jumped up even further. So they're going to find themselves, I think, really struggling, once they finish their 24 series and the collectability element goes. It's already going. I'm already finding it much more easy to buy their bottles should I want to. I don't. They're going to be struggling. And I think that's a great example. I think personally, every new distillery in Scotland should be watching this and listening to the tale of 2 distilleries that I've just told. And they should be learning from the one that has a big global fan base that everybody's supporting and is describing as the face of new Japanese craft whiskey, and the ones that are not. And one is building a long-term future, and the other is building a very short-term, but diminishing and very short future.
Yeah, and I think obviously that isn't exclusive to Japan. It's happening everywhere, but we all know of examples of where new distilleries are just not on the same page as everybody else, and they're just trying to put liquid out for the sake of making theirs look more special than everybody else's, when it's exactly the same stuff, just made in a different location.
Exactly. You're absolutely spot on.
So I think we talked about a lot tonight. I think we could talk for hours on this subject, and the fact that, prices are phenomenal, and obviously they're never going to go down. You might see the odd price drop, but it definitely isn't the norm. And I think we should wrap it up and say goodnight to everybody. Obviously, I'd like to say thanks to my guests for taking part in this and making the conversation what it is, and thanks to everybody in the chat for contributing also. It's not the same without that extra input from people that are watching. So thanks again. And obviously, hopefully Greg gets his internet sorted soon so we can have him back on a future episode. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Toby.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye, everyone.